is welcome here today. Whatever your beliefs, whomever you love, whatever your race, wherever you are on your spiritual journey. I'm the Rev Kerry Mueller, co-minister here with the Reverend Dave Hunter, my husband and life partner. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown, a home of liberal religion. And now if you would settle in and listen to the prelude which Carly will be providing. Thank you. Thank you so much, Carly. Are there announcements this morning?
Hi, I'm Kay. We are having coffee hour inside today. I don't know what the temperature is right now, but it was like 28 last night. So those that are comfortable, we can, you can partake, or you can just be social with your mask, whatever you decide. If you want to step outside with your snack and a friend, whatever. But we're going to be serving in the social hall. Thank you. Albert's happy about that. He's smiling.
Good morning. I see some visitors today. Let me take this off so you can hear me. My name is Miranda, and I want to tell you about a meeting that's going to happen on the 21st of November after potluck lunch here. We're going to have the first of a series of sessions on getting to know Unitarian Universalism and UUFP. So that program is called Starting Point. It's a new program, and I hope that visitors, recent visitors, and visitors who've been visiting for a long time, and even members will join us. Feel free to join us. I'll have more information. I'll be sending out an email with information about how to sign up for this. We'll be talking about deep listening and how to live Unitarian Universalism. So think about joining us on the 21st of November.
Thank you. Are there other announcements? And I will ring the chimes. Mary, if you would do the physical lighting of the chalice. More like a flame than a place is this church, more of a trust than a creed, more of kindled promises. So let us consecrate with fire our faithfulness, our hopes, our dreams. And the opening words are from Barbara Wells' Tenho McCullum. O spinner, weaver of our lives, your loom is love. May we who are gathered here be empowered by that love to weave new patterns of truth and justice into a web of life that is strong, beautiful, and everlasting. Carly will play what would be our opening hymn if we were able to sing, but you can follow the words if you wish. It's number 347, Gather the Spirit. Now, would the children come forward? I have a special story for you this morning and a special project. Should I use that microphone?
That's fine.
Can you bring it to me? You can come forward. Thank you. You can sit on the floor. I have to tell you that surgery this week, so I'm not allowed to crouch down or bend over, so here I am. Who here goes to school? Any grown-ups here go to school? I go to school.
I do.
You do? I'm glad. I bet that's fun. I take pottery classes. I don't really do hard work in my schooling anymore. And my teacher's name is Annie. And Annie, during the week, during the day, she's a kindergarten teacher, so she's a really good teacher and knows how to deal with grown-ups too. In fact, if Annie had been my kindergarten teacher, my whole life would have been different. I have no doubt of that. She's really good. She is the most encouraging, helpful teacher I've ever had. So when I talk to the grown-ups later on in the sermon, I'm going to talk about a flaming chalice I made with Annie's help. I was inspired by a quote from a famous author whose name was D.H. Lawrence. Now he uses fancy, flowery, old-fashioned language, and I'll use that for the grown-ups later. But here's what he meant. When you're talking about religion, you can't just accept somebody else's ideas. You have to figure it out for yourself. And you have to make it up out of bits and pieces that you scrape together. And that sounds to me just like Unitarian Universalism, where we each have to figure out what we believe with our own bits and pieces. So I have a little project here today, and Miss Ruby's going to help you. Can you get this out? I can't bend over to do that. Now here's what I did. I started a flaming chalice for you that's made out of bits and pieces. And Miss Ruby will help you take turns to add some pieces to it. And eventually, I'll take it back to my art center, and I will finish it. And then your job is to take a piece attach, and then a little attach, and put it in the bowl. That bowl is a mold, but it has a special name, and the name I just love. So here's a word I didn't learn till I was well over 60, and you're learning it now. That's called a puki. P-U-K-I. So there's a new word for you. So you can take turns adding those pieces with a scratch and attach. You can leave some spaces and holes so that it's kind of lacy until you get to the edge of the mold. If you go over, it's okay. Eventually, when I take it home, I'll add a foot so that it stands up a little bit like that one. And then I'll send it to the kiln to be bisqued, which will make it hard. And then I'll put a glaze on it. And then I'll bring it back, and that probably will take some weeks. But when I bring it back, you can have it in your classroom as your flaming chalice, and you can put a battery-powered light in it to save this for. So you can stay here and do that, or if it's better for you to go to the classroom, you can do that. What do you want to do?
Why don't we start it here? Maybe we can each put on one piece. While
Okay.
You start.
Thank you.
Starting. And is this the right order?
That's the right order, and if when you're done as much as you can do today, wrap it up carefully so it doesn't dry out, and I'll finish the rest. Thank you so much. And if the children leave any, of course the adults could add. Well, our lives are filled with joys and sorrows and hopes and concerns. If you'd like to share a few words, you can come forward and use the microphone. Or if you're on Zoom, you can use the chat to let our brilliant tech team let you know that, let them know that you have something to share. And we will hear your joys and sorrows, whether they're spoken and shared or silent and solitary. We will hold you in love. Does anyone want to share this morning?
Good morning, everyone. I have a friend of a friend who was hit by a bicycle, or hit by a car while she was riding a bicycle. So if you guys could keep Leslie in your prayers, that would be great. She's in the hospital with traumatic brain injury and all the things that you can imagine from getting hit by a car while riding a bicycle.
That's very serious. Thank you for sharing with us, and we do hope the best for your friend and her friend. Dave, you might want to move that back a little bit.
A big part of my life since we moved back from Arkansas about 10 years ago has been singing in the Wayne Oratorio Society. And because of the pandemic, we stopped singing, stopped rehearsals when the pandemic began. But we resumed again in September wearing singer's masks. And we had this weekend our first concert since we resumed. We're doing Haydn's Creation. We sang it last night and we're singing it again tonight. And it's really great to be singing again. We've got orchestra and soloists and a bunch of good people, a lot of people I remember from the past and some new people. And then Tuesday we're starting to rehearse Messiah, Handel's Messiah, which we're doing early December. So I'm glad we can sing again and kind of tired of the singer's mass, but it's necessary.
And if you're fully vaccinated and masked, you'd be allowed to attend too, or they live stream it so you can see it.
Yes, you have to have proof of vaccination and a mask, but it is being live streamed. Just go to the Wayne Presbyterian Church website and I assume you can see how to get on. 7:30 tonight. 7:30 tonight. And since we did it last night, we'll do better tonight.
They did fine last night. It was quite wonderful.
The Wayne Presbyterian Church is in the middle of Wayne.
Hi, I'm Mary. I just want to thank John and Kay for the absolutely fabulous fire last night. We had a bonfire. You can see the remnants out near the truck. But it was great. We had a good turnout and a little bit of kerfuffle over pilfered Hershey bars. But other than that, it was great. So thank you so much.
You can't trust those you use with chocolate. Well, I'd like to share that I'm very grateful this week to the medical establishment, both for the children's vaccines becoming available, and my booster, which happened this week, and my cataract surgery, which was finished this week. So I'm doing well with the medical establishment. Our meditation words today come from Gordon McKeeman, the late Gordon McKeeman, who, among other things, was president of Starr King School for the Ministry. He writes, "Spirit of life, we are grateful to be together, to form a congregation, to draw strength and inspiration from each other and from the deepest values of our faith. Together we do many things, being present with, to, and for others in their terrors and torments, in their grief, misery, and pain, knowing that those feelings are ours too. Celebrating the triumphs of the human spirit, the miracles of birth and life, the wonders of devotion and sacrifice, witnessing to life-enhancing values, speaking truth to power, standing for human dignity and equity, for compassion and inspiration. We are all these and much, much more than all of them, in the wordless, the unspoken, the ineffable, wherever there is a meeting that summons us to our better selves, wherever our lostness is found, our fragments united, our wounds begin healing, our spines stiffen and our muscles grow strong for the task. There is our faith, waiting for us to embody all that would be. May it be so." I invite you to join with me in a few moments of silence, and then Carly will join with hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. Most churches you'd next get a Bible reading, but I have a reading here from The Potter's Guide to Ceramic Surfaces by Joe Powell. The blank canvas syndrome. The student naturally concentrates on making a clay object. Of course, this appears to be the first and most obvious step, and coiled, slabbed, pinched, and thrown pots emerge bisque-fired from the kiln several weeks later. Then the inevitable next step must be faced. It is fear of this next step that accounts for the large number of bisque-fired pots remaining unclaimed on the shelves of every college pottery studio at the end of each year. Fear of ruining a good pot with poor decoration, or a miserable glaze, or even simple indecision can often halt a pot at this stage until it gathers dust and eventually finds its way to the trash can. And I must say that I'm part of a pottery group on Facebook, and people sometimes say, "I just found a pot that's been sitting on the shelf for 20 years. Can I still glaze it?" Hymn number 322, Thanks Be for These. So, taking up pottery making opened a whole new world to me. And I needed a new world about then. My father, Fred, was dying of brain cancer. It would only take a couple of months, but it wasn't soon enough to suit Fred. Once he had accepted his diagnosis and studied his options, he decided to refuse all treatment. He wrote a farewell letter, emptied his safe deposit box, called in hospice, and moved from his apartment in the retirement community to the healthcare center. He was done. This week, please. He was impatient. He was at peace with death, but not entirely accepting of the dying process. On occasion, he was curmudgeonly. Over the course of his last couple of months, my sister, who lived in Ithaca at the time, took a few weeks off from her job to manage things, and she did a really good job of that. But I lived nearby, and so it fell to me to be there every day. It wasn't easy for any of us, least of all for Fred. I practiced self-care a few hours each week by taking an art course. I hadn't done any art since ninth grade. We had a kind of a sampler course, and at the end of 6 weeks, I asked the teacher, and she said, "Oh, I think you'd like pottery best." What I heard was, "You're hopeless at drawing anything that looks like anything, so you should do pottery." I signed up for the wheel course. Well, I liked the teacher, and I made some pots, but I wasn't meant to be a wheel thrower. Not just because everything that I make comes out lumpy and asymmetrical. It was good to pound the clay when I really wanted to pummel the world. It was good to weep into the wet and squishy clay. It was good to scrunch it all up and start over again when my pot fell apart. That felt like life. But it was rather that I didn't feel completely satisfied because what I really needed wasn't happening. Eventually, I figured it out. Towards the end of that first term, one evening, on my way to the glazing room, I noticed that the class next door seemed to be having a lot more fun. Now, in the wheel class, you sit at your assigned wheel, and they're all around the edge of the room, and you could chat with the person sitting next to you, but except for getting up to get more clay or to get water, you sort of stayed right there. And if the person sitting next to you was in the mood to talk, that was fine, but in fact there wasn't much interaction. The room was too big to shout across, and I seemed to be sitting between two taciturn men who were intent on turning out great quantities of perfect cups and plates and bowls, and no time for chit-chat. Next door was the hand-building class. People sat around on stools and tables, but they moved around a lot. They borrowed tools and other mysterious objects from each other. They admired each other's work. They made suggestions. At the end of that term, I switched classes, and I became a hand builder. Not a very good one. My pots are still lumpy and asymmetrical, but I began to make progress artistically. And the community of the class was helpful. I was doing better at dealing with my father's imminent death. Over the next several years, I continued to take classes at different places. Eventually, I noticed that something different happened between the classroom and the glazing room. As the bisque pots came back from the kiln, it was time to glaze them. Here's the short course. You make a pot with raw, green, that is wet clay, and you let it dry out for a week or so. Then it is fired to the bisque stage, which hardens it and vitrifies it, but leaves it plain and somewhat fragile. Now it is time to glaze, to add a coating which, when fired again, will make a hard, smooth, glassy surface, waterproof, colored. There are several methods to apply the glaze. You can dip it, or spray it, or dab it on, or paint it, and all sorts of choices about layering and making stencils and resists and other kinds of decorations. There's a chart on the wall in the glazing room made of test tiles, but there's always a lot of uncertainty. It's kind of like computer programming. You try something and you see if the computer likes it, and maybe it'll do what you want. Only with glazing a pot, you have an actual physical object, one which you have already invested in, and which may come out of the second firing a lot more or a lot less attractive than when it went in. Now, it's only clay. There's plenty of reason to look at it experimentally. When you glaze, you should always have a notebook and pen at hand so that you record what you did and do it again if you like the results, or do something else if you didn't. But you pretty much get only one chance with each pot, and once in a while a pot is completely ruined. I remember one night hearing loud and alarming cracking noises as someone's large, elaborate vessel tore itself to pieces as it cooled unevenly in the glazing room. Sometimes you get into trouble because the glaze runs and you went too far close to the bottom and it sticks to the kiln floor. This annoys the staff no end. Or you may just hate the color. If it runs, it may ruin the pot. You may hate the surface texture or the modeling effect, or you got the stencils backwards. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong. There's a lot of opportunity for anxiety in the glazing room, a lot of hesitancy and indecision, a lot of sort of staring at pots, waiting for inspiration. Or, of course, a great opportunity for a sense of adventure and excitement. I always admired Kathy, who dipped and splashed and painted her tiles with great abandon, doing 20 or 30 of them in a half an hour, with squiggles and dots and all sorts of slapdash abandon. Well, it turned out that she was planning on breaking them all up to make mosaics with the pieces, and she just wanted a good collection of varied samples. There's something else in the glazing room. It's quieter than the making room. People come in by themselves when a pot is ready, and they find maybe 2 or 3 people there. The different classes mix. They give each other advice and encouragement. They admire the last batch that came out glazed and beautiful. Oh, yes, I love that color. How did you get it? You put the green over the blue, or the blue over the green? And if you put it on thick, it seems red, and if you put it on thin, it comes out purple. How thick, how thin? That's why Annie says you should always have a notebook. You'll never remember how you got that one just right. So I was preparing to glaze a flaming chalice that I had made. A new bucket of glaze had appeared. It was called Miraculous Black. And when you put it on, it looked just like a dull gray. But when it fires, it came out gleaming bronze metallic. It was just right for my chalice, which I had made with all those tiny triangular pieces put together in a lacy pattern like we just did with the kids. It was based on a statement by D.H. Lawrence, and here's his original quote. Sexism and all. A man has no religion who has not slowly and painfully gathered one together, adding to it, shaping it. And one's religion is never complete and final, it seems, but must always be undergoing modification. That lacy chalice represented the scraping together of the odd bits. The sense of incompleteness and uncertainty was there, and even the history of the flaming chalice was hinted at. Our symbol holds a candle, but it evolved from a wine cup. And when I first asked Annie about how to make it fit, make the shape, because I was going to make it lacy, she said, well, that won't work because the wine will run out. She was right, but I meant something else that I had to explain myself. Well, I looked up in the glazing room, and there was a new teacher from the other class. Well, he was clearly a real artist. He was very skilled and knowledgeable and sort of self-contained. And I also happened to notice that he was very attractive, although I was certainly not looking for a date, and I was pretty sure he wasn't interested in women anyway. But overall, I felt quite intimidated by him. On the other hand, he seemed friendly. He asked me about my chalice, and I explained this meaning to him, and he said, oh, I like that. I really like it. I got a sense of his whole faith history in that brief conversation. I could imagine him rejecting all organized religion and now being intrigued by the idea that there might be another way of doing religion. It was a satisfying and intimate moment. Other conversations happened in the glazing room. I learned about my old wheelroom neighbor who threw himself into silent pottery making after his adult child died tragically. I learned of other painful losses and the long, slow healing process for the parents. I learned about a dead-end job and a slimy, rule-bending boss, and how do you get a new job anyway at my age, and I'm just getting by. And I learned about the lovely young woman who had studied theology and has an MDiv, which is the basic ministry degree, but she's a Roman Catholic, and she'll never be allowed to serve as a priest, and she'll have to find other venues to live out her gifts of ministry, which she has been doing. I also learned about new babies coming home from the neonatal intensive care unit, new boyfriends, good books to read. One time it seemed that everyone in the glazing room was reading Mary Doria Russell's The Sparrow, just as everyone in the church I was serving at the time was also reading it, quite by coincidence, and years after it was published. There, in that place of heightened creativity, in that quiet place set apart, came real human connection. It was a rare and precious place in this culture of eternal busyness and fast, superficial contact. What happened in the glazing room was holy. But of course, the glazing room is not the only place. Sociologist Ray Oldenburg has written about the so-called third place, the great good places in our lives that are beyond work and family. Here's how Wikipedia describes them. Third places are the anchors of community life, and they facilitate and foster broader and more creative interaction. All societies already have informal meeting places. What is new in modern times is the intentionality of seeking them out as vital to current societal needs. Oldenburg suggests that these hallmarks of a true third place, free or inexpensive, food and drink, while not essential or important, highly accessible, proximate for many, preferably walking distance, involve regulars, those who habitually congregate there, welcoming and comfortable. Both new friends and old should be found there. My pottery class provided much of this. We even had an end-of-term potluck dinner and party every 6 or 8 weeks back in pre-COVID days. We made summer camp for ourselves one year when the teacher was away, and a between-term Christmas party when one of our number needed a lot of social connection. She was having a difficult time over Christmas. When the class needed a name for itself in order to participate in a sidewalk sale, we called ourselves Clay and Sympathy, and we thought that was a perfect name. In this internet age, we should also speak of a fourth place, all the social media that have been a blessing and a curse, especially during the shutdowns of the pandemic. A good way to keep in touch with people you might lose otherwise entirely, and to form new connections. Dave meets regularly with his law school class. They have discussions on Zoom every week. And I have sessions with my art and spirituality group. It's a lifeline for congregations, and thanks to Rick and his team to make it happen here, but an inadequate substitute for real hugs. And of course, the social media are filled with predators of various kinds, with vile and vituperation, not to mention deadly misinformation and hate groups, but we'll leave all that today and focus on healthy third places. Real creativity, real human connection, real spiritual intimacy is available to all of us if we make the effort. And Miranda, I didn't mean this as a plug for the class which you're talking about, but that's exactly what we're talking about. Here in this congregation, like every congregation, you are continuously building and inhabiting and being blessed by a glazing room of great possibilities. I think of the 3 reasons why we're here. First, we're here to care for one another. And next, to welcome the stranger. And third, to be a voice and a force for healing in the world. Each individual finds a place, creates a network, connects with others. Each individual embraces the familiar and novel stories brought by the newcomers and the old friends. And together we encourage and strengthen one another for the hard work of taking our faith out into the world and living it as if we mean what we say. The ongoing community of this congregation makes it all possible. Like a glazing room, the church is a little set apart from the rest of our lives. For this 1 hour on a Sunday morning, we are held in the care of the community. Cell phone silence, the demands of bosses and spouses and dependent relatives on hold, while we come face to face with our deepest selves. This is a place also of challenge, a place vibrating with memory and hope and anxiety and adventure. In the silence, in the literal silence of the meditation or the greater silence of a time set apart, we may come to grips with questions we would rather not face. Questions more serious than taking a chance on a new glaze. We may find ourselves looking deep into the anxiety of our lives. People sometimes tell me that they sit in services and cry. And as a person in the pews, I've done that myself. As a preacher, I'm never certain what it is that will touch someone to that depth. From my experience, it's usually a chain of thoughts that are leading far from the surface words of the sermon to the deep place where that person needs to be. I'm honored when I hear such an experience, and I always reassure the persons that this is meant to be a safe place for all. In a place of heightened creativity, we are empowered and energized and inspired to bring our principles alive in our congregation or in our own lives or the wider community. And here's the real challenge. The comfort, the nurture, the creativity of the Glazing Room, they don't just happen. Some third persons are sustained by profit-making entrepreneurs like bars. Some are funded and guided by dedicated individuals or vast foundations. A glazing room like this is a small face-to-face community. It offers a richer, fuller program, a deeper network of relationships, a matrix for growth and exploration. Unitarian Universalism is not a fly-by-night cult. We've been around for hundreds of years, always a beacon of hope and freedom. But it takes all of us to keep the doors open. It takes commitment. Each of you committing your best selves to the community that nurtures us all and helps us all to deal with the world. The tides of your individual lives come and go. Your level of activity in the congregation may wax and wane over time. But if you are to be strong together, everyone must keep supporting our common efforts. Social justice and fundraising and the care and feeding of volunteers. We all have a role in all of these projects so that the Glazing Room will be here for everyone who needs it. For the person you haven't met yet who is giving the spiritual life just one more chance. For your children who need the chance to be together, who need the village that you comprise. For the pioneers who gave so much in the early years and now need to step back and accept help. For the activists working to preserve democracy and our highest ideals. For the people who need hope and support and encouragement. Let me close with another fragment of a poem by the late Gordon McKeeman, one of our finest ministers, a teacher and mentor. He called it anyone's ministry, and he might have been writing directly to the Glazing Room, which is your fellowship. Ministry, he says, is a quality of relationships between and among human beings that beckons forth hidden possibilities, inviting people into deeper, more constant, more reverent relationship with the world and with one another. So may it be. Amen, shalom, salam, and blessed be. Hymn number 331, Life is the Greatest Gift of All. Thank you, Carly. That tune is called Brother James's Air. Will you join with me in the words by which we extinguish our chalice as Mary turns out the flame? We extinguish our chalice flame, but not the light of wisdom, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and in our hands until we are together again. The benediction comes from Rilke. I believe in all that has not yet been spoken. I want to free what waits within me so that no one has dared to wish for, what no one has dared to wish for, may once again spring clear without my contriving. Amen. Now, do we have a postlude? Postlude and then coffee hour. Amen. Coffee.
Thank you. I had it in my bag.